Hello ladles and jelly spoons, and welcome back to another spooky video in celebration of Halloween week. This may come as a surprise and honestly probably should, but I watched my first horror movie when I was only 3 years old. It was Nightmare on Elm Street, and afterwards I became absolutely obsessed with Freddy Krueger and just all horror movies in general. So over the years I've seen plenty of horror movies, many of which I consider to be highly underrated. So in this video I'm going to give you a basic background on the 6 most underrated horror movies of all time and leave it up to yourself as to whether you agree. So number 6 is Night of the Demons, which came out in 1988. The best year ever in my personal opinion. This movie stars a whole bunch of unknown B-movie actors. The film terrified the life out of me as a child. I was severely scarred and swore never to watch it again. However, watching it as an adult I can see that it's actually not scary at all, but I can appreciate it as the funny, cheesy B-movie gore fest that it really is. I'd definitely say it's better than the Evil Dead series, which is strange because Night of the Demons has never been as well known as the Evil Dead. There's a pretty unforgettable scene in the movie where a girl becomes possessed for no apparent reason and begins to shove a lipstick inside her nipple, which goes all the way into her breast. Obviously that imagery tends to stay with you. I'm pretty sure that this scene is not explained in the film, and also pretty sure that whoever wrote this scene is on the absolute strongest of meth. Number 5 is Arachnophobia. This film came out in 1990 and stars Jeff Daniels and John Goodman. I've not got much to say on this film because it pretty much does what it says on the tin. The plot centres around a species of killer spider which begins to terrorise a small American town. It's listed on Wikipedia as a black comedy, but I can assure you that there's nothing funny about this film for anybody that actually has arachnophobia. I haven't watched this film in about 20 years and I'm pretty sure if I did go back and watch it now it's probably terrible quality. But it's not about quality, it's about quantity. The quantity of millions and millions of 8-legged demons that quite frankly should not exist and are an abomination to the Lord. Number 4 is Stigmata. This film came out in 1999 and stars Patricia Arquette and Gabriel Byrne. The story is that Patricia's character begins to suffer with stigmata, which is a disease in which the victims start to display the wounds of Christ. It's normally only seen in really devout Christians, but Patricia's character is an atheist, and that's kind of the twist in the film. The scariest part about this story is that stigmata is a real disease, although it's not clear whether it's caused by other health conditions, mental illness, or just straight up fraud. Still, the fact that it's a possibility does make this story way more eerie. There's a pretty cheesy and unnecessary possession scene in the film, which did scare the tits off me when I was a child, but looking back now, it was just pretty pointless and really just seems like a cheap excuse for some special effects. But considering how awesome the rest of the film is, it really doesn't matter. The film itself is very late 90s in its vibes, especially in its fashion, so if you do like a good 90s vibe, then it's definitely worth a watch. Number 3 is Sinister, which is a 2012 movie that stars Ethan Hawke. This is probably the most well-known movie on this list, and rightly so. Although this isn't a found footage movie, it does have found footage elements and a soundtrack that's incredibly unsettling. The artist who designed the demon in this film truly deserves a medal. I watched this in my late 20s and found it hard to sleep afterwards thanks to the demonic face that burned into my retinas for days. It's hard to explain why this film is so scary without giving the whole story away, but if you want to watch a modern horror with paranormal elements and a generally good cast and plot, I would give this one a go. The Blair Witch 2. This came out in 2000 and stars Kim Director and Jeffrey Donovan. This high budget sequel was pretty critically panned and isn't really well regarded by Blair Witch fans due to being a non-found footage film sequel to a found footage film. Many people say that this should have been a standalone film and not part of the Blair Witch series, which in part I do agree with. However, the Blair Witch lore adds a lot to the film, so I'm glad that they kept it the way that they did. This sequel is seen as a much lesser film than the original Blair Witch. However, it does have a much better plot with a puzzling twist and a stellar cast of mixed personalities. Kim Director being the standout member of the cast as Psychic Goth, also called Kim. The ending's really well done and the film itself has really good pace and builds to a creeptastic conclusion. And if you get the DVD, I would stick around for the extra, which is called The Secret of S River. I watched it back in the day on VHS, so I had to suffer through actual manual fast forwarding and rewinding, which obviously some people watching this will not have a clue what that was like. And The Secret of S River absolutely terrified the life out of me as a child. I literally had to sleep with the lights on for days afterwards. Watching back now, again, completely fake and not as scary as it was, but watching it in the original instance was terrifying, and I still hold that nostalgic love for the film because of that. And in my personal opinion, the #1 most underrated horror movie is As Above, So Below. This came out in 2014 and stars Perdita Weeks and Ben Feldman. This is a found footage film which is set in the Paris catacombs. The way that it's done with the camera work and the setting create an intense feeling of claustrophobia, which you can almost feel coming through the screen. The plot is smart, it's gripping, and for the most part it's realistic up until the kind of last few scenes where it gets really effects heavy, which is a shame because it really drags down what they've built up in the first part of the film. However, these kind of few scenes aside, the ending, the finale itself is really good and does not only creep you out, but it really makes you think as well. And the scene which sticks out most in my mind for this film is the one in which the team are crawling through kind of like a tunnel made out of human bones. And the tunnel itself is so tight and so small that it gives me secondhand claustrophobia just watching it, to the point where now when I rewatch this film, I have to close my eyes and cover my ears. It just really reaches the part in my mind that just absolutely creeps the life out of me. So that, in my opinion, is the 6 most underrated horror movies of all time. If you haven't seen any of them, I would highly suggest you give them a watch. Obviously, scariness of horror movies is subjective, so not everybody's going to agree and not everybody's going to enjoy these films, but I personally love them. And if you just enjoyed this video in general, please give it a like, subscribe, share, and all of that nonsense. The eagle-eyed amongst you may have noticed that I'm not wearing actual clothes today, and I am wearing Asda pajamas, or as the Americans might say, Walmart pajamas. That's because these beautiful sparkly pajamas are nicer than any actual clothes that I own, so I'm pretty much going to be wearing these until they drop off my body.